Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the UNathletic Podcast with yours truly. Thank you once again for tuning in. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit the notification button so you don't miss out on any of the content from this podcast, okay? Now, on today, I want to talk about, because it's kind of getting dry as far as sports, there is some news coming out, but not a lot. A lot of uncertainty at this point, a lot of propagating and a lot of predictions, but nothing really substantial outside of, within football, injuries and things like that. Training camp, 90s, solid information coming out about how guys are doing and things of that nature. And a lot of that, honestly, you're not going to really see until preseason. And that's where, we as consumers and fans will see more of the legitimacy of what we're looking at in reports and things of that nature. But I want to talk hoops today. And I know that it's been kind of dry as far as news coming out with hoops, with, the KD situation and his trade request, Kyrie, John Collins, and a bunch of others who still need to be moved around the league and things of that nature. But what I want to talk about today, and it's been talked about all week, and I just want to kind of give my 2 cents because I'm pretty sure you guys have probably been wondering what my thoughts are on it. I have not been speaking about it on Twitter. I've actually not been that active on Twitter this week, but I just want to talk about Draymond Green and his extension, as well as the Warriors' financial situation and who they potentially will extend, who they trade, potentially who could leave, because there's Andrew Wiggins, and Jordan Poole, who are extension eligible and are on the last years, essentially, of their contracts this coming season. And you have Klay and Draymond, who the following year will be in the last years of their contracts. And so that's the thing that's been talked about ad nauseum. And so I want to give my thoughts on it. So today's episode is going to be about, the Warrior that everybody loves to hate in Draymond Green, and the rest of the Warriors' financial situation, and figuring out, or not even figuring out, but just my thoughts on who I believe they're going to keep, who should take a pay cut, things of that nature. So let's just get right into it. I want to start with Draymond just because I think what a lot of people do when it comes to Draymond is they sit there and think, oh, well, Draymond was terrible last year, terrible in the playoffs, and it's recency bias, right? It doesn't never, from what I've noticed, a lot of people don't ever go beyond just the numbers. Draymond's impact on the team is felt in every single game, regardless of his lack of offensive impact, whatever you deem that to be. But for me, this is my thought process, right? So you got Draymond Green, who has been with the Warriors his entire career, and at this point, has been very productive for a second-round pick. But the one thing I said about Draymond initially, I want to say maybe after Kevin Durant left, and it might have even been maybe even after the second year after KD left, maybe 2020, 2021, when the Warriors had been were able to get into the play-in and lost. But I had, my thoughts were that Draymond Green, out of the core three, Steph, Klay, and Draymond, I felt that Draymond's game would age the worst, and it would age the fastest amongst the three. And that's even taking into consideration Klay's 2 injuries, right? His ACL and his Achilles, taking all of that into consideration, I think Draymond's game is going to age faster and the worst out of those three. So at this point in Draymond's career, right, let's just kind of put it out there. Draymond Green at this point in his career is still a great all-world defender, hands down. Whether it's as a communicator on the floor, whether it is as someone who can let guys, and when I say communicator, I mean letting guys know where they need to be. His vision on the defensive end, which that doesn't get talked about a lot, but Draymond having the processor, the CPU, the CPU to process, and then to also to see things happen before they do, and to have such a processing speed that he's able to tell guys, hey, you here, stay there, hey, move here, or whatever the case may be. To be that vocal of a leader on defense has been crucial for the Warriors. And not only that, it has actually made guys around him better defensively. And when I say that, I mean that as in the scheme of team defense. Individual defense, that's a whole nother thing. Draymond is the best individual defender on the Golden State Warriors outside of Andrew Wiggins, and I would say Andrew Wiggins is actually second to him. But Draymond literally has made the Warriors defensively a top 10 defense every year he's been with the Warriors, outside of possibly the last two seasons in 2020, 2021, and then 2019, 2020. Those 2 years, you know, they were well, at least 2020, they were a bad team. 2020, 2021, they got to the play-in, but they were still a very good defensive team. And so the thing is that I think that's where most of Draymond's value comes in. But there's also this, offensively. I know he doesn't score points the way most people would like him to. And matter of fact, I'll because I have Basketball Reference set up here. So let me just read to you all his numbers for this past season. So this past season, Draymond Green registered 7.5 points a game, 7 assists, and it looks like 7.3 rebounds. He shot 52% from the field, 29.6% from three. He shot 65.9, which is basically about 66% from the free throw line. And his PER, which is his player efficiency rating, which takes basically everything into consideration, was 14.3. Now, I will tell you this. To me, those are normal Draymond Green numbers. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think they're bad. The one number that has changed, and it has changed drastically back from the moment Kevin Durant joined the Warriors to now, is his three-point shooting. And there are people out there who say, well, why didn't Draymond work on his game? Why didn't Draymond work on his three-point shot and get it better? This is, I don't have the direct answer. You would have to ask Draymond Green, but I would contend that during the time that Kevin Durant was there, and then once Kevin Durant left, specifically when Kevin Durant was there, I don't believe Draymond was going to be a shooter. Like I don't think that was going to be his role in the offense. I don't think that's what they wanted him to do at all. I think that anything he was going to get was going to either be at the rim or somewhere in the paint. I don't think that was how he was going to be utilized. Granted, yes, you say, well, he still could have worked on it. And that is also true. But I think that what people have to take into consideration is that some of these players, what I've noticed, at least from interviews and then just seeing how they play on the court, more times than not, a lot of these guys, like when you see them in open runs and they do stuff that they don't do in an NBA game, that's because they have the opportunity to do it. It's not because they can't do it or they don't want to do it. It's because that's not what they're asked to do. Perfect example, if you look at like a Montrezl Harrell, I've seen Montrezl Harrell shoot, like actually shoot the ball. Like, and that's not what he's asked to do though on the NBA floor. He's capable of doing it, but that's not what they ask him to do, and that's not how he's utilized. And I think with Draymond Green, it's a similar thing. When KD was there, Draymond was solely a facilitator, and I believe a guy to just get to the rim. But when you have Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Kevin Durant, there's no need for you to be a scorer. Not in that role, especially when you have, and when you had at the time, you had Andre Iguodala, you had Sean Livingston, you had, you had so many weapons around you and guys who could just do what they do offensively that I don't think Draymond Green was required nor needed to put up a bunch of points. All he needed to do was do what he always does: facilitate, set screens, even just being an all-around vocal leader on offense, making sure guys are where they need to be, changing things up if need be, and then defensively doing what he's always done. So to me, Draymond Green's value has always been as a defensive-minded guy. He will never be 3-and-D. And at this point in his career, I don't believe his three-point shot will ever recover. I don't think he'll ever be a respectable three-point shooter. From this point forward, I think in his career, Draymond Green's just going to be a terrible three-point shooter, and people are just going to have to accept that. Should he be more efficient around the rim? You could say that. I mean, but if I look at his effective field goal percentage is 55%. And I think a lot of times people, when it comes to Draymond Green, when his shot doesn't fall or when he misses or when his floater isn't going and things of that nature, when that doesn't work, people just think, oh, he don't work on his game. I don't think that's the case. I think that Draymond he's aged. I think Draymond early in his career, what actually helped him a lot was that Draymond was slightly more athletic, not uber athletic or nothing like that, but Draymond is a below average athlete now in the league. And he doesn't have the same speed that he used to have. He's now had to consistently kind of keep himself in better shape, which is something that early in his career wasn't really, not a problem, but it wasn't something that he had to do as often. And I know a lot of people look at, throughout Draymond's time with the Warriors, the 2 seasons without Kevin Durant, the 2 seasons that the Warriors did not play their best and they weren't title contenders. And you look at the fact that Draymond Green seemed to not care and Draymond seemed to kind of give up on his team. I saw that as well. And I think that, those things, problematic. Did not like them. Did not like the idea of Draymond sitting there and actually being like, I don't want to play. Like, I don't want to be here if I'm not going to have to take things seriously. And that's where it's like, if that's the case, bro, like, you got to find another motivation, right? Like, why not just become a better version of you? But that's not how Draymond's wired. Clearly, because if it was, he would have been looking like a different kind of Draymond with Steph out, Klay out. Even with them being a bad team, I felt like that was the case. But it's also the fact that, let's just take this into consideration. I'm not saying this factually or matter of fact or saying that it's true, but let's just say maybe Steve Kerr and Bob Myers and Joe Lacob and them were like, we're cooked this season. Just go out there, do what you do what you can, and let it be what it is. And then obviously develop the younger guys, right? At the time, Eric Paschall, a Jordan Poole, a Kai Bowman, guys like that. And then getting a James Wiseman, trying to get these guys and just develop them up. It wasn't so much about really trying to win, because at that point in time, it's like, you're not in position to. You're not good enough. You don't have enough talent around you for that to happen with two of your best players in Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson being out. And so for me, I just think that at this point, Draymond is who he is. And I think that the only thing that I would want Draymond to do better is I would want Draymond to not, and maybe it's not even so much Draymond, it's also Steve Kerr, but I want less point guard Draymond. Reason being is because I want Draymond to settle as a secondary playmaker and not so much a primary playmaker. Because I feel like once that happens, his efficiency goes down. Teams know exactly how to play him. He's easier to defend at that point. And so I think he needs to be a secondary option. And there needs to be a lot of pick and roll. Like, to me, Draymond at his best within the Warriors offense is when he is a secondary option, him and Steph run pick and roll. And if Steph kicks the ball back to him, then he gets to play secondary playmaker and make the play. Like, if it's somebody at the rim, if it's Kevon Looney at the rim, or it's a kick out to Wiggins, or it's a kick out to Poole, or whoever else it is on the floor, I like him as that secondary pick and roll playmaker, as opposed to bringing the ball up the floor, telling everybody where to go, and then they're playing him for the pass, and he's trying to force things. That part of Draymond's game, do not like. I don't think Draymond needs to score more. Because if you look, let's just look at this current roster, right? You have Stephen Curry, all-time great. Klay Thompson, who this coming season, with a injury-free, rehab-free offseason, is going to be better than he was in the second half of the season leading into the playoffs. Right? You have that. You have Andrew Wiggins, who has been incredibly consistent, not only in the postseason, but he was also consistent in the regular season. You have Jordan Poole, who has ascended, just ascended. Should have been the most improved player in my opinion, but has ascended as a offensive weapon. And then you look at the guys who, maybe not are as great offensively, but are a better offensive player than Draymond Green, as far as being capable of just getting buckets, right? Jonathan Kuminga, just an athlete, a guy who puts pressure on the rim. Moses Moody, a shooter, a highly intelligent basketball player, and just a mature player. He can get buckets. We saw that in Summer League, and I know it was Summer League, but I'm just pointing out the fact that he is better than Draymond Green offensively. He is a guy that Draymond can dish to. You also look at the possibility of the rookies coming in. Patrick Baldwin Jr., Ryan Rollins. These guys, they have enough offensive talent around Draymond Green to where Draymond is, all his points are going to have to come easy. He's going to have to get the easy buckets, the wide open dunks, the wide open layups, the putbacks if they're there and if he can get the rebound. That kind of stuff, that's what Draymond is going to have to do. But Draymond is going to have to be more of a screen setter, getting open buckets, because his role on the offense is just as is basically Kevon Looney's, right? Like, Kevon Looney on the Warriors is just a great screen setter. And then when if he is wide open at the rim, bam, makes the bucket. Or he kicks it out if that option is not available to him and he gives it to someone else. And that's why, to me, like that's the role of Draymond. Like Draymond has the same role as Kevon Looney in the Warriors offense. The only difference is that he's a better playmaker. But outside of that, I don't think that Draymond is ever going to be this great three-point shooter. He's not going to return to his normalcy of what he was doing before Kevin Durant got to the Warriors. That's just not going to happen. That's just not how I see things happening. Now, my thing is as far as what does that mean for whether the Warriors should extend him and give him the max? Here is my problem with giving Draymond Green the max. At this point in his career, his production, strictly his production, like based on numbers, and I'm talking about the points, rebounds, assists per game. No, I personally would not give him that, but I want people to understand something here, because if you look at the last extension Draymond got $100 million from his last extension. That deal, he actually took a bit of a pay cut. He probably could have gotten more if he wanted more, but I think he purposely did not do that and did more of a team-friendly max so that they could re-sign Steph, because he got his extension before they re-signed Steph, just so we make that clear, before Steph got his second Supermax deal. So you have that, right? And then you also have Klay Thompson, who ended up getting a max deal after his ACL injury. And so I think what is happening now between Klay, Draymond, Andrew Wiggins, and Jordan Poole, I think what has to happen now, because everybody keeps talking about who's going to take a pay cut, blah, blah, blah. I think at this point, as much as I don't want the Warriors to give Draymond a max extension, I think Draymond is in the very unique position to actually get it and demand it and actually see through to actually getting it. Stephen Curry recently said that he, Klay, and Dre were a package deal. And that essentially he wants the three of them to stay together in Golden State for their careers. Steph has already stated he doesn't want to go anywhere. Great news. Glad. I'm so happy to hear that. But now the question is who's going to sacrifice? Who is going to sit there and take some dollars off of what they believe they've earned so that they can keep this thing together? Because at this point, I hear people say, oh, Andrew Wiggins should take a pay cut. For what? Like, realistically, that makes no sense. Andrew Wiggins is 27, I believe. Like, what sense does that make for Andrew Wiggins specifically? Like, why would Andrew Wiggins sit there after coming off an incredible playoff run where he was the consistent guy, game in, game out, consistent, especially in the finals. 2 double-doubles, terrific defense, put up buckets when we needed it, just played his role to a T, and he starred in it. Why would he now take less money for an organization that, yes, he's been with for 3 years, yes, he's grown, he's happy, and things of that nature? But why at this point in his career? He's 27, I believe. I'm going to double check that. But why would he now take a pay cut? It just doesn't make sense. Yeah, he's 27. Andrew Wiggins is not taking a pay cut. I'm going to let y'all know that now. He's not. The question is what is he going to get? But he's not taking a pay cut. And if he does, it would honestly shock me. It would shock me. Because that would just mean Andrew Wiggins is a different built kind of cat. Much respect to him, but he's just a different built kind of cat if he takes a pay cut. I don't see that happening. We know Jordan Poole won't take a pay cut, and he shouldn't. Because the fact of the matter is, he was the 28th pick in the draft. He sat there, worked his tail off, trying to get better, struggled his rookie season. Sophomore season, you saw glimpses, but he spent a large stint of time in the G League. Then comes into this season, blows everybody's mind, and then gets to the playoffs where you really earn your money. And what did he do? He started off the playoffs with 30-point games, back-to-back, if I remember correctly. So those two, Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole, just let's push them to the side. They are not taking pay cuts. Jordan Poole, probably going to get a max possible extension. 102, 103, 104 mil, somewhere in that range, maybe even 105. That's what he's more likely than not going to get. Andrew Wiggins, going to get a max deal. Can't go super max. That's not possible. And I don't honestly believe that that's something that he would even try to push for. I think he would be open to another max deal. What those numbers would be, can't really tell you. I'm not sure because I'm not a cap specialist and I don't know the numbers. But I believe Wiggins gets another max deal. I think what happens now with Draymond and Klay Thompson is Draymond gets his max. That's what I believe. It's not what I think should happen, but it's what I believe will happen. Because I believe that if Draymond doesn't get what he wants, as far as the deal, it impacts Steph. Because Steph, again, has stated he wants Draymond there with him. He wants Klay there with him. And for those who don't think that teams are going to go after Draymond Green, you're sadly mistaken. They're already talking about the teams that would go after him, or at least that may potentially be interested. Trust and believe. If there is a team out there who has great offensive pieces and all they're missing is for someone to captain their defense, you don't think they're going to consider Draymond Green? I don't know why you would not. Honestly. Like, there's several places I can think of off the top of my head where Draymond Green would make sense. Whether it's due to his fit or just due to his relationship with guys on the team. Like, I could definitely see him getting interest from other teams around the league. Especially if it means kind of tearing down, not even tearing down, but just bringing the Warriors down a few notches, right? Because they won't be the same without Draymond Green. We all know that. Like, we've seen the Warriors without Draymond Green. I'm not saying that they're bad, terrible, or anything like that. But their defense takes a steep drop. Their offense, believe it or not, it drops. Their efficiency on offense does drop without Draymond Green on the floor. Whether you want to believe it or not, or whether you like it or not, that is a fact. You can look at the numbers. So I believe Draymond Green gets his max. Maybe not the 140, maybe somewhere in that neighborhood. But then there's also Klay Thompson, right? And this is where I think things are very unique. And I think this is where the front office, Bob Myers, Lacob, I think this is where they find themselves in a very solid positioning, because I think Klay Thompson wants to stay in the Bay for the rest of his career as well. And if that ends up being the case, right, I think Klay Thompson would be willing to take less. Now, I'm saying all this without Klay Thompson and Draymond playing this upcoming season. Now, that's where things can get a little iffy as far as with Klay specifically, and even with Draymond to some degree, because let's say Draymond comes out next season, right, and comes in, and let's say he plays let's say Draymond Green plays 60 games next season, misses 22 games out of the season, but plays about 60. And let's say after this year, right, Draymond put up 7, 7, and 7, right? That's what I told you guys earlier. He put up 7, 7, and 7. Let's say next year, I'll give you a basketball reference as saying it's his projection for next year, matter of fact. Let me just do that. So, projections for Draymond Green next season are for him to average 9 points a game, 8 assists, 8.8, about 9 assists a game, 9.3 points a game, and then 8.4 rebounds a game. If he averages that on what they're saying is like 47% shooting, 29% from three, but he raises his free throw shooting to 71%, averages a block a game, 1.7 steals a game, so basically about 2 steals a game. If he puts up those numbers and then garners interest in the Defensive Player of the Year, or even if he wins it, let's just take that. Like, what if Draymond Green were to win the Defensive Player of the Year award next year? You don't think he gonna get that max? And the thing is, Draymond is motivated, like, at this point, because they don't have to give him the extension right now, right? They still have plenty of time. If Draymond Green goes out and plays as motivated as I believe he will be, because he's going to want to repeat, because he's going to want to show that he's earned the max. If he goes out there and based on, Basketball References projections for him next year, and then he wins Defensive Player of the Year, and then let's even throw this in. What if he ends up getting let's say second team all defense, not even first. Well, let's say first. If he wins Defensive Player of the Year, he should be first team all defense. If he does that, he's going to get the max. Like, you wouldn't be able to deny him that, because if you don't, he's gone. And I think that's a problem. It would impact the team chemistry. I think it would bother Steph. Not to say to the point to where Steph would want to leave, but I think it bothers Steph. I think Steph would have a problem with that. So at the end of the day, I just am of the mindset that Draymond Green gets his max. I believe Klay would take less, especially because they gave him the money they gave him when they gave it to him, which was when he got his ACL injury, And then Andrew Wiggins, I believe he gets a max deal. Nothing larger than that, a max deal. Jordan Poole probably gets somewhere in the neighborhood of 103 to 106 mil. If he goes beyond that, I'd be shocked. And then you look at the fact that they have a bunch of other guys they're going to have to worry about in a few years as well. Kuminga, Moody, Wiseman. Like, they're going to have to worry about them as well. And then you have the rookies from this year who they don't have to worry about for the next few years. But right now, I'm thinking Draymond Green absolutely gets his max. I think Klay Thompson takes a pay cut, has a team-friendly-esque deal where he still gets his money. It's just going to be team-friendly. And then I think Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole both get their max deals, because that's the only way you're going to be able to satisfy this. Now, I will say, definitively, somebody does lose out. Realistically, somebody loses out in a huge way, because realistically, what you would want is for two guys to take a pay cut. I believe Klay Thompson would be willing to take the pay cut. I think he would do that for the team. Draymond Green, on the other hand, feel like he feels that, I believe Draymond's thought process is, I took a pay cut on my last extension. I'm not taking one this time. I think Klay Thompson is thinking, y'all gave me money that y'all didn't have to give me after an ACL injury. I'll take less. Andrew Wiggins, my thought process, I think Wiggins is just like, yo, nah, give me max. I balled out in the playoffs. I balled out in the finals. I was the second best player on the floor for our team in the finals. I want my bag. Give me my max. Jordan Poole's young. And Jordan Poole shouldn't be trying to take less right now anyway. So to me, I think Poole's like, yo, I balled out. And I'm not done. I'm not done. This is just the first step for Jordan Poole. Like, we might just have our next Warrior great in Jordan Poole. And I think that's what Jordan's agent is going to tell Bob Myers and Joe Lacob. I think that's what Jordan's telling his agent. Like, yo, I could be the next great Warriors guard. I could be not Steph, but I could be the next great Warriors guard. I can be the guy that leads them into the future post Steph, Klay, and Dre. With Moody on my left and Kuminga on my right, and I got Wiseman in the paint? What? So, again, this is going to be a situation where somebody definitely loses out realistically. Ideally, we want two people to take a pay cut. I just don't believe outside of Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, and Jordan Poole are not going to take it, and I don't think there's no reasoning or rationale as to why they should. It just wouldn't make sense on their behalf unless they're just being incredibly loyal to the team. And I don't see that. I'm sorry. I don't. So much to the chagrin of Warriors fans, we're going to lose one of Klay, Dre, Andrew Wiggins, or Jordan Poole. One of them will be gone realistically because they don't have the cap space to keep them. And unless there is an unprecedented spike in the cap, like the year when they got Kevin Durant, I don't see them keeping all of them. And that would have to happen literally within the next 2 years. The cap didn't rise enough this year for them to be able to just throw money at Jordan Poole or Andrew Wiggins, and they're not going to be able to. But you better hope that going into the next offseason, there's a big enough spike in the cap and that the NBA brings in enough revenue to where they could fit all four of them. I just don't see it happening. I don't believe that the league is going to spike that much in light of, what we're going through societally with the pandemic and now with monkeypox. I don't see the NBA making that kind of revenue. I just don't. Now, I want to thank you guys all for once again tuning in. I know this was a bit of a long episode, but thank you if you tuned in throughout. I appreciate you. Thank you again for tuning in to this week's episode of the UNathletic Podcast. Once again, please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit that notification so you don't miss out on any content from the podcast. And then please follow me on Twitter and Instagram at CJ the Unathletic. Again, that's CJ TheUnAthletic at CJ the Unathletic. Appreciate y'all, and I'll see y'all next week. Peace.